Now welcome to another Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at and discussing the results of the poll that asked you what you thought of the 8th and final episode of The Acolyte. We'll also be taking a look at the Nielsen streaming charts for the 3rd week of The Acolyte, which would be the 4th episode since the first 2 dropped in the first week. And as usual, I'll also then be reading and responding to some of the comments left on the poll. Alright, and let's jump right in with the poll results, where we'll see that 2% of voters thought that this final episode of The Acolyte was excellent or really good. 4% went with it was pretty good or at least above average. We then had 8% say it was okay or maybe a bit below average. That then left 24% to say it was terrible or just not good at all. And of course, there was a final 62% that said they haven't watched it yet, or perhaps never plan on watching it. And as usual, as I always try to point out, these are just the results from people who tend to follow my channel. Different channels will get very different results perhaps. Some more positive and some, even more negative. But as has been the story all season long with these polls, the most telling part about them, I would say, is that there continues to be around 2/3 of people who again are following what is primarily a Star Wars channel, meaning they are or should be or once were Star Wars fans, but they're not watching a Star Wars show. They seem to have no interest in what Star Wars is currently doing, despite being Star Wars fans. However, it is not just those who watch my videos and who are fans that aren't watching the show. As mentioned at the top, the Nielsen ratings for the 3rd week or 4th episode have come out, and it turns out that The Acolyte has dropped out of the top 10 original shows. Which means, for one, that's obviously not very good. But for two, it means we have no real idea how many people actually watched it or how many minutes of watch time it got, since Nielsen only shows us the top 10. We only know that it wasn't as many as King of Collectibles, The Golden Touch, got down there in 10th place, with 298 million minutes of watch time during this particular week. And sure, that's a fine show. I've actually seen a few episodes of King of Collectibles, and I enjoy it because I love getting a little peek into the world of high-end collectibles because I enjoy acquiring low-end Star Wars collectibles. But anyway, the idea that it beat out a Star Wars show is kinda crazy. It's crazy to think that Star Wars can't beat out most of the shows on this list, if not all of them, when you really think about how popular Star Wars is, or once was at least. And trying to be fair or even a bit charitable towards The Acolyte for a moment here, but King of Collectibles has 14 episodes, and I'm assuming they just dropped a new season and they dropped all the episodes at once compared to The Acolyte dropping a new episode weekly. This week was also the week of the shortest episode of The Acolyte. The 4th episode was only 35 minutes long, so of course it's harder to rack up watch time when you don't have a ton of time to watch. And what you'd really have to do is divide whatever the watch time was by the run time of the episode to get a rough approximation of views to know how well or poorly it really did when it comes to how many people actually watched. But even still, come on, this is a Star Wars show, and not only that, but it's a Star Wars show that features Jedi and lightsabers and fighting cool-looking Sith characters. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of Star Wars, some would argue. This is the part that everyone is supposed to love and want to watch. And yet, the views simply don't seem to be there. Or at least not in the number you would think Disney and Lucasfilm would want them to be there. I'd imagine they'd expect to be up there competing with Bridgerton. That's why they paid $4 billion for this franchise, to compete with Bridgerton, not see their show get outdone by it by a 10-to-1 margin, potentially. And if you are Disney and Lucasfilm right now and you're sitting back and seeing these numbers roll in, and yes, the numbers could improve, again, let's be fair here, but if you're seeing these numbers roll in for what is, again, Jedi and lightsabers and all the cool stuff, I guess you could call it, the stuff you really think your fans and the very casual fans want to see, you gotta be panicking a little bit, because it doesn't seem like that trick is going to work anymore. It doesn't seem like you can just put some cool lightsaber fights on screen and get the views and thus the subscribers to Disney+. Though again, numbers for the show for The Acolyte may improve. Nevertheless, here is the problem, here is the issue I think Disney and Lucasfilm is facing. Not that many of them will ever watch this video or listen to me of all people. And mind you, I'm no expert on the inner workings of Hollywood. I don't know what goes on in the minds of the average Hollywood exec, nor do I probably want to know. I'm just someone who has watched a lot of what's come out of that place, that's come out of Hollywood, and I have consumed a whole lot of Star Wars in my life. And so, let me explain this to you, Disney and Lucasfilm, not that again you're going to listen, but special effects aren't special anymore. They're really not. People are more likely to notice when they're not top tier than when they are. Meaning that great special effects that look good or realistic or are extra flashy, like a lightsaber fight, they're simply expected and taken for granted by your audience. No one is really going to applaud you when they look great unless they look so far above anything else that's ever been done, like Avatar, for example, and I mean the blue aliens, not the benders. But great special effects are taken for granted to the point where when they're not great, people are going to notice them. And yeah, I know there are plenty of people right now on X saying how amazing the lightsaber fights were in the Acolyte, or how great this was, or how great that was. And for the most part, I'll agree that they were pretty good. The lightsaber fights were pretty good. And as a Star Wars fan, I do still like a good lightsaber duel. I always will. But the people losing their mind in X over this are just Star Wars fans. And let's be real, a lot of them are kind of engagement farming. That's what they do, and more power to them, I suppose. I'm not trying to criticize anybody out there who loves Star Wars or loves the Acolyte and wants to try to talk about it to get some clicks. But to be very blunt about it, cool lightsaber fights and all of that sort of stuff, the Jedi and the Sith, all of these things, that doesn't bring in the average person anymore. When it comes to special effects, they've seen it all before at this point, and they'd rather watch other shows that deliver cool visuals and a fantastic story. They want substance to go along with the spectacle. They're not going to sit there and watch a 35-minute show or whatever it might be just because you got some cool lightsabers. They actually want substance. And flashy visuals are more of a bonus or something that, again, is expected. People, when they watch Star Wars, expect to see cool things. You're not impressing them anymore. That's just the baseline now. In other words, people these days want substance over everything else. They want interesting characters and complex, well-written stories, not just lightsabers bashing against each other. I mean, Bridgerton is not in the top spot because of its amazing fight choreography and special effects. It's not up there because of its mind-blowing spectacle. It is up there because, well, honestly, I don't know why it's up there. I don't know what people see in it, but seriously, it's up there because, especially women, I would argue, they are drawn to the characters and the storylines. They find enjoyment in getting vested in the characters, not being wowed by flashy fights. And I mean, when is the last time you, watching this now, when's the last time you had someone say to you, you need to watch this show or this movie for the visuals? Seriously, does that happen anymore? And yeah, I'm sure it does from time to time. But when people tell me to watch a show these days, and I get recommendations from tons of different sources, from people I know in my personal life, to friends I have online, to comments and videos, I get recommended things all the time. But never does anyone ever say to me, watch this because the fights are amazing, or because the special effects are so great. Literally no one ever says that to me. Basically, what I'm trying to tell you here, Disney and Lucasfilm, even though you're not listening, I know I'm kind of pissing into the wind here, but it's time to face a brutal reality. You're going to actually have to produce quality Star Wars if you want to save this franchise. You're going to have to focus on writing and delivering great stories, along with still having fantastic visuals, because they are going to be expected. They just are expected, I should say. And I know, you might be saying or thinking, well, Andor had great writing, and relatively speaking, people still didn't watch it. And, well, that may have had a little something to do with the quality of everything else leading up to it. That so much of what you'd made before was so mediocre that many checked out and never gave it a chance. You're going to have to put together a string of quality Star Wars to get people back into it. You can't just make one good thing every once in a while, followed up by 5 mediocre things, and expect Star Wars fans to just take it. Even though, yeah, some will, but that is a topic for another time. And that is because I have rambled about this long enough, and what I think I will do is just read a few comments, no responses or anything this time, sorry, but I will read a few comments from the poll before wrapping up this video, and as always, we'll start with the top-rated one from the poll, which this time came to us from only one Star Wars fan who said, "Born too late to witness the moon landing, born too early for the colonization of Mars, born just in time to see Darth Plagueis half-assed in the Acolyte." Then there's this one from PBH who said, I am convinced that the true villain of this series is Vanestra Rowe. She basically covered up and pinned all the murders on her dead friend Soul. I don't care what noble intentions she has, that's messed up. My only reason for even watching a season 2 is for a finale confrontation between her and Kamir. It's ironic that Rowe's attempt at covering up to preserve the Order's integrity would lead to their destruction. We also then have this comment from Leo Pleurodon who said, you know that famous line from the Joker, do I look like a guy with a plan? I just do things. That sums up the entire envelope of character, decisions, and motivations in this show. The sad part is they all take themselves serious, reasonable doing it. Then there is also a comment here from Joe McComber who said, I'm hoping the power of many not watching this show will convince Disney to do a little better. Also then we have a comment from Great Counsel who said, the worst part of the Acolyte was just wasted potential. There was good choreography, the flash was there, the substance was not. You could see what they were reaching for, but they never quite stuck the landing. Filling in the gaps yourself isn't a satisfying way to watch. Ultimately, its biggest sin is that character motivation is driven because of plot goals instead of earned actions. We then have a couple comments that were a bit on the long side, but since I appreciate people who take the time to write such long comments to really give their thoughts, I'll put them on screen here. They come from Butcher Pete and Lum Vaughn. I'm not going to read them, but feel free to pause and read them yourself. Again, thanks to those who leave comments. I really, really do appreciate it, but sometimes they are a bit on the long side and would take up the bulk of the video just to read. Alright, and now let's wrap it up with this comment from Michael Crawford. And again, I'm sorry for so few comments and no responses. I will certainly be doing a thunderous ramble in the near future going over questions from this poll and many of my videos. But for now, let us wrap it up with this one. And they said, House of the Dragon, the characters serve the plot. The Acolyte, the plot serves the characters. Well, that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you thought of the final episode of The Acolyte, or tell me what you thought about what I had to say here, or tell me what you think about these poll results. Whatever the case may be, you know what to do. Leave a comment below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.